In this video, I want to work really much in conjunction with the last video, where I break down question 3 from the Leaving Cert composition paper, so it's a melody question. And in this video, rather than break it down, I want to go through it in real time so that you can see the thought process behind actually doing one of these questions. So the first thing we're going to do is look at what they've given me. I want to look at the instructions at the top, and I want to look at the actual melody, the first 4 bars that they've given me. If you looked at the last video, you can see we worked with a dance type called a gavotte. This particular dance type is called a jig, spelled with a G as opposed to the one spelled with a J-I-G. This one is called a jig. It's again an old Baroque dance. It's part of the Baroque suite. It's a 6/8 dance, just like a normal jig. It's quite a lively folk dance, and it usually tends to have there's a couple of rhythms that it has. But the main one that it tends to use is goes crotchet, quaver, crotchet, quaver. I've got a bar line, and then I've got just 6 quavers. This is the rhythm that the old Baroque jig tends to use most often. As you can see, you can kind of work a lot of that out already just from what they've given you. You know it's in 6/8. You know that the first bar is crotchet, quaver, crotchet, quaver. They actually don't stick to the rhythm here. They've got 3 quavers, but then they got a crotchet quaver again. And this is something you can do. You don't need to stick to this rhythm. If you look at the rhythms that they've given you, you'll kind of be able to work out what ones are acceptable anyway. So you don't really need to memorize rhythms for different dance types or anything. You just look at what they've already given you and you use that as your basis for what you can and can't do. Okay, so we know it's a jig, we know it's in 6/8 and what rhythms we can and can't use. The next really important thing we need to look at is the form. And the form, as in our previous video, is A1, B, B1. So we know it's going to be A, then we've got a repeat of the A section, A1, then B, which is a contrasting section, and then B1, which is a repeat of the B section. They're not going to be exact repeats, they're going to be repeats with alterations. And remember, if you look at our previous video, the alterations, so in A1, it's going to be different, it's going to be altered from A, but the alterations are only going to come at the end, maybe in the last 2 bars of that section. It's going to be pretty much the exact same for the rest of it. B, likewise, when we've got our B1, it's pretty much an exact repeat of B, except for those last 2 bars when it needs to change. The A1 section needs to change because it's got a modulation to either the dominant if you're in a major key or the relative minor if you're in a relative major if you're in a minor key. And your B1, it needs to change from B because it needs to have a perfect cadence at the end, whereas your original B section had an imperfect cadence at the end. Okay, and other than that, our rules are pretty much the same as we had for question 1. You still need to have your T to Do ending. You need to have your modulation, like I said here. You need to have, you leave out your sequence, you don't use that. You need to be aware of your key, your time signature and all those kind of things. You need to tick your instrument box, you need to have your phrasing and your dynamics. And those are the main things you need to be aware of. So I'm going to switch over and I'm going to just try and do one of these in real time. Okay, so we've got our 4 bars here. Now we need to start working with it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and stick as much as possible to the rhythms they've given me and the notes that they've given me. So you know what, for the first bar I'm going to have an exact repeat. I mean, like I said, with question 3, it is pretty much all an exact repeat of the original anyway. So I'm going to exactly repeat bar 1. Okay, so I'm exactly repeating bar 1, and I'm not going to exactly repeat bar 2. I'm going to make it almost the exact same. I'm just going to change the last note, and I'll explain why I'm doing that in a second. So I'm going to have it the exact same for the beginning because I want to have an exact repeat. That's what an A1 is, as opposed to a whole new section. Okay, so I'm going to change that last note. I'm not going to have it on B flat. I'm going to have it on G. And the reason I'm going to have it on G is because I'm trying to set up my modulation here. So if you looked at it, our key signature is 2 flats, so it has to be either B flat or G minor. As you can see, there are no accidentals in what they've given me, so it has to be in B flat major. So I know I'm in B flat, which means I'm modulating to the dominant of B flat. So that means I'm modulating to the key of F major. So I need to set up a modulation to the key of F major here, and we do that. F major is different from B flat in that it doesn't have this E flat note. It's got an E natural. So somewhere along here I'm going to have an E natural note. And the reason I've jumped to a G here rather than a B flat is when I'm going to the key of F major, I want to have an imperfect cadence here. I want to have chord 1 in the key of F major here, and I want to have chord 5 in the key of F major here. This is something we did with question 1. At the end, when you're doing a modulation, you have an imperfect cadence in your new key. So I'm going to have chord 1 in F major, which is F, and I'm going to have chord 5 in F major, which is C here. So F major here, C major chord here. Okay. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to keep the rhythm they've used, but where they jumped from a D to a B flat to a G, I jumped from a D to a G, and I'm going to land on an F here. So that really outlines my F major chord. So I've kind of established now that I'm going into F major, and now I need to try to have like that E natural note in there and really kind of outline the chord of C. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to have a straight raising run here. I know I'm not starting on a note of the C chord. The notes of the chord C are C, E natural, and G. I started on a D here, but it's just an accented passing note because I'm going to put my E natural right here. So around that D, I've got a C note and I've got an E natural. So it still gives that sense of being on chord 5 in the key of F. It's just that I'm not accenting the main notes of that chord. Okay, and I've run right up to a high G here, which is again one of the notes of the chord C. The chord C is made up of C, E, and G, and I've landed on a G. Okay, so I've got my A section and I've got my A1, which is the exact same as A, but just has a little bit of a change here. Now I need to compose my own B section. Now the B section, it needs to begin on an F major chord. It needs to begin on chord 5, and it needs to end the first time around with an imperfect cadence, so it needs to also end on chord 5, but the second time around needs to end on chord 1, it needs to end on a B flat. So all I need to know for the moment is I'm beginning at bar 9 on a chord of F major. So I need to, my anacrusis here, leading into that phrase, needs to lead into one of the notes of F major somehow. Now I could do that by going to an E, I could do it by going to a C. You know what, I'm going to really establish my new key with the E natural. I'm going to have an E natural here to lead into my F note. Okay, and because I want an F major chord really outlined well here, I'm going to really accent the notes of F major. I'm going to have an F here, and I'm just going to have a little passing note of a D, which then leads to another one of the notes of an F chord, which is a C, right here on another strong beat. Okay, what I need to be thinking about now is I need to be leading towards an imperfect cadence here. So I need to be leading towards, I'm going to do a 4-5 imperfect cadence. If you looked at our video on cadences, you know that an imperfect cadence is any cadence that ends on chord 5. Now, often I'll do chord 1 to chord 5, but I'm going to do it a little bit different here. I'm going to do chord 4 to chord 5. So my chord 4 will be an E flat, so I'm going to have an E flat chord in here in bar 11, and I'm going to have chord 5, which is an F chord here in bar 12. So I need to start trying to lead into an E flat chord somehow. So you know what, I'm going to frame a B flat note here. I'm going to jump from C to A, that's just to keep my F going, and I'm going to land on a B flat note here. That way I can kind of have chord 1 in this bar, because I really want to re-establish that I'm back in B flat now. I want to have chord 1 somewhere along here. So I'm going to have a B flat chord here, leading into an E flat chord here, and then an F chord here. So B flat chord 1, E flat chord 4, and F chord 5. So I need to outline B flat. I need to make sure my strong beats are on notes of B flat, which are B flat, D, and F. Okay, so I've got my B flat here. I'm going to jump up to a D so that I can make sure one of the notes of the chord is on a strong beat. And what I need to do then is start trying to target some notes of an E flat chord. So I'm going to come down here, and I've now landed on a B flat. I'm going to leap to a G. The reason I'm leaping to a G is because it's one of the notes of the chord of E flat, so it really helps me to outline that E flat chord. Okay, I'm going to mess about a little bit here, because I just want the main things I need to think about are that I'm landing on an F chord here. I really want to make sure that I'm landing on an F for my imperfect cadence here. So I just need to outline the chord of E flat. I need to make sure my strong beats are on notes of E flat, which are E flat, G, and B flat. So I've got all of that. And I need to make sure I'm landing on an F major chord ultimately here. So I'm going to keep coming down, right down here, and I'm going to make sure that that last crotchet, I'm going to time it just right so that last crotchet lands on an F. So you see I've got my E flat chord up here. I've kind of continued my E flat here. So I'm actually got an E flat for these first 3 notes as well. But then I have eventually ended on an F, giving me an imperfect cadence. Okay, so I've got my B section written. For the next 4 bars, I'm pretty much just going to mirror that B section. I'm going to rewrite it almost exactly, but then I'm going to change it in the second last bar so that I can lead up to my perfect cadence. Okay, so you know what? I'm not going to have a C here. I'm going to have it as an E natural, just like I did before there. Or will I? No, because then I would have to modulate again. I'm going to have it on a C. Okay, if I had done this exactly the same, I would have had an E natural note here, which would have meant that I was modulating again, and I don't want that. So I'm going to have a C there because a C leads quite nicely to an F note as well. It's that jump up of a fourth, which leads really nicely. So I'm going to have an exact repeat here of what I've just had. Okay, and I'm going to exactly repeat bar 2 as well, because there's no reason why I can't do that. This is a B1 section. It needs to be almost an exact mirror image of the original B section. Okay, but when I get to my last 2 bars, that's when I need to start thinking about changing it. Now how I'm going to change that is I need to remember that I've got a perfect cadence here instead of the imperfect cadence I got here. So my chords need to be chord 5 in bar 15 and chord 1 in bar 16. Chord 5 would be F and chord 1 would be B flat. So I'm really going to want to outline the notes of an F chord here, and I'm going to want to outline the notes of a B flat chord here. Okay, I think how I'm going to do that, I'm going to do exactly what I did up here. Instead of beginning to outline my F now, I'm going to wait till the second half of this bar, just like I did with the E flat, where I outlined an E flat here and kept it going into bar 12. I'm going to begin outlining my F in the second half of this bar and keep it going into bar 16, and then finally end on my B flat note. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of outline a different chord here. I'm going to kind of outline an E flat again. So my strongest notes are going to be on the notes G and B flat, which really are 2 of the strong notes of the chord E flat, just like I've got up here. So it kind of gives the impression, actually I've got an exact repeat there, which is nice. So it kind of gives the impression that I'm just going to completely exactly repeat what I've got here in bars 11 and 12. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to change it now, and I'm going to outline an F major chord. So where I jumped from B flat to an E flat here, I'm now going to jump from a B flat all the way up to an F. And I'm going to bring it right down, because now I can target it so that when I'm coming down, I've kind of outlined that I'm on an F chord here because it's accenting the note F. But I'm also landing on the note C, which is one of the strongest notes of the chord F. The chord F is made up of F, A, and C. So now I've targeted a C, and it lands really nicely on a strong beat, on the first beat of bar 16. So I'm still outlining my F chord. I'm just going to do an arpeggio of an F chord. An arpeggio is when you completely outline the exact notes of the chords. So instead of just playing without any passing notes or anything, I've got the exact notes of the chords. The notes of the chord F are F, A, and C, and that's the notes I've got. And then my A note leads quite nicely as a T, so it's like a T do into my B flat. So I've got my do at the end. And that is our dance rhythm. So we've stuck to our jig rhythm. We've got our 6/8 based on the notes they've given us. We've got our modulation. We've got our AABB form. We've ended on an imperfect cadence here. We've ended on a perfect cadence here. We've got our repetitions as they need to be. So I think that's looking pretty good. Let's just have a listen and see how it sounds.